pretty cool, man. I'm digging it.
Geometries.
Well, it was more. It was Morgan's office, and then when she went to Australia, I came up here from downstairs.
Oh,
I,
nice. Okay.
yeah, so we just did up the wall, and you know. But here, let me tag you while we're waiting. Anything from here out, it's on the replay. So even though nobody's here, just be aware that
Oh yeah.
is this thing. Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Of course.
oh, here they come. Okay, so
Definitely, we can pump it
there's
out more
one.
later.
Here, let me just tag you, Stephen Popiotek, my brother, man. Yeah, it has been too long. God, when's the last time we did something? Soulogy Fest?
Jesus Christ. Seriously, exactly, man.
Huh?
I can't believe it, but
I know a lot's
flies.
happened. You know, Franco transitioned.
Yeah, that was
That
intense, you guys.
that was
Especially.
very intense, dude. That was. We actually caught the COVID on the same day.
Oh shit! Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
I went through like this 5 day initiation. I came out of it on a Friday. I reached out to Kimberly, his partner, on Saturday, and he was I think about to go into the hospital. And then
Wow.
yeah, I had this thing with him. He was still, I guess, on a breathing machine, and I had this encounter with him on the couch, uh, which was pretty trippy. And then he's come in a few
Wow.
times. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We have to look at it from the perspective that we've all gained, and you know, I am human, but I am soul first. So
Yes. No, it's been a lot of people transitioning. There were 3 people I knew in January who passed too.
I
So there's
know,
definitely
man. It's like
definitely a lot of leads.
it really is, and a lot of the fuckeries coming out now too, which is kind of, you
Oh my
know,
God,
it really is, and
so much around
it
that.
it
Seriously.
it really is, and that I'm not caught up in any of it. I just look at it as I know everything has to come out, and you can see it coming out now. So
Yeah.
like when the mainstream media is reporting stuff that they were denying, it's all coming out, and that stuff going on in Australia is just it's and again, not to get a charge out of it, but it's on the level of ethnic cleansing. It's on the level of depopulation. I mean, I had we had a conversation with somebody that was over there last week, and there was a comment on YouTube, and so I think the hardest populated city or town is Lismore, and this person lived
Mm.
in Lismore, and she said, "Hey, they're not telling anything. They're not being honest about the deaths, and that and first of all, they're not even reporting them. But locally,
Mm.
they had shut down even volunteers coming in to help, and of course, the
Mm.
government wasn't doing anything. They took 3 weeks to even send the army out there, and they had like 10,000 homes got wiped out. Anyway, they said that they
Yeah,
were
wait,
bringing
now
in
you're talking about Ukraine because before it
Lismore,
sounded like you mentioned Australia. I was like, what? No,
Lismore,
no. When
Lismore,
you
Australia, Queensland.
wait,
Or
I don't know what's going on in Australia. What's I didn't hear anything
well,
about
they
that.
had, of course, they had the COVID stuff. They've been leading the
Oh,
charge there.
that's yeah,
As
like
soon as they
lockdown
backed,
mania.
as soon as they backed off of that, they had this freak rain pattern
Wow.
come in
Okay.
for days, flooded everything. 3 weeks later, the government finally comes out, and then another week later, it's happened again, and it's just devastating. The lady was
Oh,
saying in her
geez.
comment that they're having to bring refrigerators in because there's so many bodies, but they're not
Wow.
talking about it. And
Wow.
then if you look at the historic rain patterns, they run pretty this time of year, and it just goes like this. It just goes straight up. And so they're
In terms of
also showing, yeah,
weather warfare, weather engineering.
they're all showing also showing radar patterns of planes that are in the exact spot that are doing all these, like they're just flying in basically the same pattern in the same area. So I mean, but it's we know it's all going to come out. So that's part
Yeah.
of what everybody's.
Well, they're
So
getting
they're
so desperate to like really reset the matrix and like try to use new technologies to further create more fear and division and like disconnect people from the new energies. Like there's so much of that going on too. I definitely will talk about some of that for sure because there's
Yeah.
specific things I'm seeing in areas,
How much
like
time
that
do
are
you
being
have?
activated.
How much time
Oh,
do you have? Okay.
I'm as much as you want.
We can go like 90 minutes. Yeah. Because I got a
That'd
show
be
in
awesome.
I got a show in 2 hours. But
Yeah.
so
All right,
there's
I've
a
been
couple
busy.
of things I wanted to talk to you about. I guess we can do that, and then we can go on to whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure, absolutely.
and you may not know anything about these things, the first item anyway. But so one of the things that you know, Mary Rodwell. You know Mary.
Sounds familiar.
She wrote. She just
What's
wrote. She's written several books, but she just wrote one last year called "The New Human." Now she is in Queensland, and since the mid '90s has been actively out there in both the the light worker groups, what is it called, UFOlogy groups, and
mm-hmm.
she's been just really out there, and she's a dynamic lady. She comes on about every 2 months, and anyway, she was sending me some videos that Dr. Michael Salla was doing, which had to do with these what are they, arcs, right? And what it is, they're like all over the world, and one of them's in Ukraine. And that was strange. Nobody else lives here.
What happened was
Having a little trouble with my landlord, so maybe I'm hoping he's not coming over here doing
oh
anything he shouldn't be doing. These arcs are, and I don't have this. I'm not expert on this, but I did watch some of the videos. He's done several, Dr. Michael Salla, on his YouTube channel,
mm-hmm.
and these arcs are supposedly, I guess, implanted in the earth, and that the idea is that they're being turned on and they're going to impact our awakening or whatever. And I won't get into it. If you don't know anything about it, I'll just mention that. But the other thing
So
that
arcs, well, how is it defining the arcs? Because there might be an intersection point of what I'm seeing by a different name. What is
I don't really know. I mean, I know there's always a metaphorical aspect to things, but also I think this has some kind of physical, attribute to it, and that I think if I remember correctly, like that they're rising, like they're gonna come out. I think basically positioned in the sky. Yeah, they're coordinated to certain points and that type of thing. I just didn't know because I know you run in those circles, and
Yeah, I haven't really followed this stuff lately, but
yeah.
the one potential intersection point there is a group of positive extraterrestrials that are like fifth dimensional, more like light beings that actually come from Uranus, and
Mhm.
I only recently had some telepathic contact with some of them. First, when I was working with a couple clients that had connections in a couple locations, that this particular ET group had buried some ancient technology, not just physical, but also on a multidimensional level, long time ago that was being prepared to be activated, kind of like a special grid that this
It
group from
sounds
Uranus
like the same
was
thing. It
creating.
sounds like the same thing.
I'm wondering, that's fascinating. And there were a couple locations in Canada that I saw, a couple in Europe. I don't remember after there. I didn't get exposed to all the points, and this was a few months
Hmm.
ago. I just re-listened to it again. It was fascinating, and I felt their energy. They was really beautiful. They're very playful
Yeah.
as well, even though they're so advanced. But their energy was they were calling themselves like galactic light technicians.
Right.
So they really want to work with the higher Aquarius energy in
Right.
terms of helping us make that transition into like reclaiming our sovereignty over technology instead of technology controlling us. It's more of a healthy relationship to electricity and electromagnetism and being able to really have more sovereignty in that realm because our bodies produce obviously a lot of electrical energies and this has been exploited a lot by
Right.
technologies. So they want to help bring out this new Aquarius love grid that's supposed to be activated and over the next several years in conjunction with the solar energies that are coming in at a stronger rate. So this is that much I
A
know from
stronger
that angle. I
rate.
don't know.
I think there was like
Oh
35
yeah.
of them
Oh
in
yeah.
the last weekend.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No,
That shift
that
was
was definitely
crazy.
needed. That
Yeah.
was definitely needed to clean some heavy shit. I tell that for sure.
S-
Oh
So
yeah.
another thing I ran across, I try to stay in touch with the just different platforms just to see what's out there, what's
Sure.
happening. One of the
Absolutely.
things I've noticed is a lot of the more established platforms that kind of brought us into disclosure and conspiracy, they seem to be hitting a wall, hitting a ceiling. Uh,
Mm.
you know, the information of it is not, you know, as substantial as it was, because it seems like people are becoming empowered, taking things into themselves, and really changing the external from their internal transformation. But one of the things I run into, I don't know if you've ever seen this lady. She's pretty lit. Her name is Gigi Young. She's on YouTube. Uh,
Young, no.
she's been around. She's been very consistent. She puts out really good work, very thorough. But she recently came. Recently came out with a series called the Mars Myth, and I think it's about 5 or 6
Mm.
videos at this point. But the basis of it is really interesting, because she says that there is a, well, first of all, her basic premise is that regardless of all the narratives and all that stuff, this is about consciousness. So it's truly about
Hmm.
what we think. So things are presented to us, and we know this game. They're presented, whether it be COVID or whatever.
Yeah,
Things are presented to us. We
sure.
take it in as a belief system or an overlay, and then we conduct ourselves from there, creating our reality based on some kind of illusionary BS or fuckery. And so
Yeah.
what she was saying was really interesting, and I don't have an, you know, I don't really have an opinion other than I do totally feel that the you know, the words we use, authenticity, transparency, sovereignty, has to do, at the end of the day, starts and ends with our consciousness, and that's
Hmm.
where we, you know, we can, you know, kind of navigate this thing more and more, with more and more efficacy, in harmony. What she's saying is that, you know, in about the 1930s, and I think a lot of this can be validated, of course, is where there was the ET, at least more evidence of the ET actively becoming involved with the Nazis. And then, of course,
Hmm.
we know the journey of the Nazi frequency, which is infiltrated and really established in NASA and the CIA.
Yeah.
And so what she says is that basically, that the powerless powers that be, that have had the esoteric knowledge and that kind of converged at that point and became that force, up to this day, had a plan and a strategy, and that was to create a narrative that that our DNA had been retooled and effed with, you know, and that it really isn't about the literal aspect of that, but it is about the power of suggestion, and that ultimately their goal will be to introduce, let's just say, a new religion that is based on the fact that they are our progenitors, and that they are our gods, and that those select few, and you know, the Illuminati 1%, whatever, that's
Yeah.
really the basis of it. And that the other part of it, which I found really interesting and somewhat inspiring, because I'm the probably one of the biggest advocates of the human species on the face of the earth. The human is the hero. Thank you, Morgan Lee, for showing me that years ago, when I thought I am soul was all there had to be, and then I had to realize, oh, you got to get in touch with your human to find your soul. But
Real
what
for it.
she says is that there is a natural evolution, okay, regardless of interference or not, that is
Sure.
occurring, that is the universal hand, that is the true awakening and the true evolution of us moving into the higher dimensions, and so on. And so I thought that was really interesting. And you know, there are no mistakes that I've been putting this together over the last few days. And then you come on. I was so happy to see that Morgan got out, reached out to you. But yeah, I don't know. What are your
Definitely.
thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially, but I mean, starting from the last part of what you said, I mean that's definitely something I would advocate for over many years, and that's been the heart of the work really for me is about that, and that how love is the key to activate that new DNA, and it's essential for that evolution of humanity, and that it is part of that what I mentioned a few little while ago about that group from Uranus, that there is a intersection point of different positive cosmic beings, galactic beings, planetary beings, who are here to help host this new vibrational hearth that Gaia is creating, from her core out. And there are certain scientists who talk about the core of the Earth not just being this. Well, scientists keep changing some of their opinion about what's exactly going on in the outer core, inner core, but there definitely is a source of light in the center there. There's a German scientist who talked about, yeah, something a lot of us see shamanically, that there is a, and the inner core is definitely this like hyper compressed like plasma sphere is one interpretation of it, which is like an inner sun that Gaia has, and that it has a deeper relationship to other things going on astronomically with our sun, with the galaxy, etc. And so literally, from what I see with it, is that the same way that you could have, say, a light bulb, or like a fluorescent tube, and you would put electricity in it, make a light, and just depending upon how much electricity you put, those electrons can jump right into higher orbits. So you can have different colors that can come out just depending upon the frequency of how much the electrons are stimulated. So in Gaia's core, she's literally going through a physical quantum shift to a higher vibration, from like a yellow stomach to like green heart chakra energy. And like the Law of One books by Ra, I always recommend those books to people. To me, they were the best books that talked about cosmology in terms of soul evolution, and like relating it to like the chakra system, both on a soul level and on a planetary level. And so for me, that's kind of part of my reference point that I use, and even with the channelings, it kind of substantiates a lot of their material. But what they also talk about is that we're moving from the solar plexus to the heart chakra, which is the same theme that all the religious masters, everyone's talking about, that for millennia already. That's the idea of moving from Pisces to Aquarius. But even beyond that, that's part of the great completion of the huge astrological ages that signals the birthing of a new school. In that new school is a quantum vibratory shift on a planetary scale. And then the beings that inhabit that planet have to have a certain minimum vibration to, inhabit that school. Otherwise they reincarnate somewhere else, which is more compatible to their growth and their choice over, X number of millennia, just depending upon where their vibrations at on a soul level. So this whole point is that Earth, that for me, that's what the ascension is about, is that this catalyst, how our own electromagnetic fields are tuned into Gaia's magnetic fields, to the Schumann resonance, which has also been shifting and getting higher. And we have the magnetic pole shifts that are happening at an increased rate in terms of the movement of the poles. And, there's a lot of things timed together, which is part of Gaia's, birthing, like the phoenix, she's breaking out of the egg, so to speak, in order to like exalt and show her heart chakra and create a love school for humanity, for what the new humanity is about. And from what I've seen with that, it's going from a 2-strand DNA to a 24-strand DNA, which is supposed to be which is a lot of extra strands.
No kidding, right?
Much bigger. It's a much bigger antenna system. But this is the thing, this is what a lot of the, so-called governments, the real government powers and institutions, agencies, Illuminati groups, they've been aware of this as well. And so part of the main thing that they've been trying to do, from what I've heard, that more scientific studies were done that started back in the 60s and 70s, where they started to really see some of this new DNA thing shifting in people, and realizing that, hey, well, we have to start to put a little hand of intervention here, or their desire to manipulate the process, slow it down, with all different research around it, because it's always about the same idea, right? Divide and conquer. So part of the idea is that they understand that humanity has so much power to co-create collectively this new reality very quickly if we all got on the same page with that, and really get in some positive intervention from our star nations very quickly. So that's part of their divisive campaign, is to polarize the populations, keep them so fighting amongst each other and not really realizing who the common enemy is, so to speak, and realizing who the puppeteers are, that it becomes like a delay tactic, and then people start to disperse the power of what the collective can actually aggregate together if we actually were on the same page. So if you get people on all these divided pages, then it's like neutralizing waves of intention. You start to create more chaos, more turbulence, right. And then it puts more pressure on other people that are light workers, that are holding space for the new frequency and for the new Earth and for the new timeline, to kind of step up even more, because we're saying, wait a minute, we don't want the boat to go this way. It's tilting too much, so to speak. So, I mean, there's a lot more to go on with that, but to continue answering the question, I would say, from what I've seen, there definitely has been DNA exploitation throughout time, but I think there's been a lot of like projects where different ET groups, positive and negative, right, have done interbreeding and different types of breeding projects, and to create certain bloodlines as well. And some of the bloodlines are positive and some bloodlines are negative. And this is why a lot of the negative royal families are obsessed also about their bloodline, because they want to maintain a certain psychic capacity that this negative alien DNA gives them, if they are part of an actual bloodline, because I've seen people, I've seen different groups of that. I've, you know, that's a longer story around that too. If people have worked on past life wise, people with different connections this life psychically. So I would say that, yeah, there's definitely some disinformation in terms of, I would say more so for a lot of the Sumerian stuff that goes on, and like a lot of overblown Anunnaki propaganda,
Yeah.
where they want to trick people into thinking that humanity was made as some kind of slave race, which is bullshit. That part is bullshit to me,
Yeah.
100%.
See, I
That
think,
we're not.
yeah, I think that's what, you know, really
Oh,
what the
you're just
basis
referring
of
to.
what she was saying is the basis, just to keep it simple.
Okay, cool.
And that was the, I guess you would say like the primary vehicle was that story, the whole Anunnaki story.
Mm,
And, and it made a lot of sense because, you know, if you look at the, mm, I don't know, I don't want to say the origin, but if you look at, yeah, the origin of what can be really validated, and you can see the path from the 30s, no doubt,
hmm
of something happening. You know, you had the Vril Society, the Thule
Yeah.
Society, in the 30s. You know, and again, you know, Germany's coming out of being wiped. You
Secret
know,
space program with
yeah,
them too going on now. Yeah,
and
yeah.
see all of that, those sub narratives, including secret space. She's saying, or not that it's not literal, but that it is really just a narrative being built through, in part, through the New Age movement of the '90s, and that at some point, you know, and if you listen, if you listen to it, you go, okay, so people are slowly going to gravitate. You got this whole woke thing, right? Like that's been picked up, you know,
Oh
that
God, yeah, yeah.
word, right? And so, and then it becomes, oh
Kind of like
wait a minute,
abuse.
we all have one God, and then here's the narrative, and people slowly gravitate to it. But I mean, obviously, you know, obviously there's a lot of proof and a lot of evidence, especially now. And like you said, things can change so fast of this awakening, regardless of how many people that actually are doing the type of work or living the type of lifestyle that we're living. That's actually having a huge impact. But it's more so, I think, in collaboration with Mother Earth and the universal energy, as opposed to, you know, it's all on us kind of thing. But
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, and I mean, especially when the stuff we've been noticing, and just again when I'm working with clients in different states or different countries, you know, usually have to work with the land first around them and see what's going on, if there's disturbances underground energetically, if like if especially if they're feeling like they're being disconnected or stuck or being attacked. You know, we have to identify some of the variables in the background, static, so to speak, in the environment. And there's been a lot of new energies, a lot of new manipulation technologies being used since December, January of this year, specifically, that are coming online to really try to suppress or squeeze the kundalini of different areas and like mess with the ley lines more and trying to like unground people. So, and this I see is I mean, aside from, you know, well, the Nazi topic is more kind of involved, because for me, I'll make a little link back. One of the negative ET groups that's been a real pain in the ass on a bigger level is the negative Nordic ETs, and so this is who a lot of the Nazi groups were connected to.
mm-hmm.
You know, both historically as well. Aside from like reptilians, or really for me, there's another group that's more like the serpent humanoid group. That's a close ally with the negative like
Mm-hmm.
Nordic ETs. And this in Egyptian mythology, they were known as like Apophis or Apep or Apep, who was the one that fought against the sun god Ra. Um, and I've worked a lot of people and had a lot of attacks with that group, you know, and they'll a lot of these negative groups, especially those two and other ones, they also work with that black sun symbolism, which is also what Hitler also worked with in Thule Society. The black sun symbolism is a very potent symbol now that's really being pushed out on a deep level subliminally. And you know, this is part of what we try to identify is like what's going on with this collective like malware that they're trying to update the malware, you know, on a monthly, weekly basis to see how they could try to usurp or slow down our consciousness ascension, you know. And so for me, part of my job is always trying to identify, you know, just as the flow, how do we make these anti-malware solutions to that pollution, you know, so we can not let that get in the way, right? And so it's a bit of both, where you have to be aware of like the disinformation and some of the narratives that are being exploited and
Right.
promulgated right all over, but at the same time you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Obviously, there are like seeds of truth in certain areas where, all right, like which, like what is the core essence of this idea, you know, and what's formed around it that has led to all this distortion, you know, being able to clear out those layers is also important, the baggage. And also try, that's one reason why I try not to, I don't, you know, I try just to see what I see myself when I'm working with people, and then get mirrors back, and other people I have that are kind of part of my team, they also pick up on similar things that happen, and we check in like, oh, do you feel this shit going on today, or like last night, or you know, and you know, again,
Last
we
night.
check in there. Exactly, like what's going on now, you know, like what's this wave we're feeling from Mars, or what's this wave, you know, that's going on, you know, with this like a negative pressure cooker feeling. And that's something that also was happening more recently with some of the new cocktails and some of the chemtrails that they were starting just a few weeks ago. We noticed a difference in some of the things that they were
I would have to
happening.
second that, because I noticed about a month ago that now here where I'm at, I've been in and out of here for 6 years. Lived here for a year and a half, and it's funny because, and I'm not being political, I'm just describing the observations. Pre-Trump, there was a shitload of, I mean, literally like a checkerboard. I'm up here in the mountains. There's
Yeah.
110,000 people in the city. I'm in a city of 20,000 next to Fort Smith, which is 110. So it's not like a hugely populated area. But I would notice these massive checkerboard chemtrails, and this would be back a few years ago, and then these massive
Hmm.
weather patterns would come. Now, Trump comes in, and they start, you don't see them that much. You would still see them, but you wouldn't see
Yeah.
them in mass. And then all of a sudden, everything comes back, and I walk out the other day, and I'd never seen this before. I saw a straight up vertical, like a rocket had gone off, straight up vertical chemtrail, and another one going right across it like a cross. I'm like, what the hell is that? You know? So there's definitely been,
That's interesting.
yeah, that was really interesting. It was right over my house too, which made me kind of, oh, good. You know, yeah, I was going to ask you
Well,
something.
it's
Go
also
ahead.
funny
Yeah.
about the cross, because there's one of the other lesser known annoyances in terms of like identifying some of the darker galactic characters, so we can call them out. Because, well, for me, it's also about, I use it more about taking back my power, and taking back, helping people take back their power is half the battle awareness, right? Is being aware of what the problem is, so you can be able to be like, wait a minute, I didn't consent to that. So the problem is, a lot of people are, you know, have being hoodwinked, so to speak, are being tricked to consent to things that we never really did consent to consciously, you
Yes.
know, that are like extrapolated from different things going on in social contracts and different events collectively, politically, you know, militarily. And so we need to, like, you know, revoke these contracts is a really important part of it. Like, no, I do not consent to that exploitation in the scale. You know, I don't need any more abusers in my life, you know, so to speak, you know, whether a terrestrial, extraterrestrial, interplane, you know, and building those. But it's hard to build healthy boundaries if you don't know that something, if you have squatters in your room, but then someone's telling, oh no, don't worry about that. It's all love and light. There's no other squatter in your room. It's like, you know, you know, so for me, there's a lot of this crisscrossing, like the chemtrails, in terms of
Mm.
like the distortions of like narratives of information warfare going on. You know, a lot of different communities where they're, on one hand, you have one side of the conspiracy UFO community is trying to say, oh, don't worry about anything, it's all taken care of right now, and the other part's saying, oh no, it's all doom and gloom now. And it's like, you know, you have a lot of this polarization going on, I see,
Yeah.
you know, and it's you know, for me, I'm a double Gemini, so I always see both sides. I try to, at least, and you know, I definitely get hit with both sides. So I'm like, okay, what's going on in like the middle path here, you know? And because usually it's a combination of both vectors going on. And then, but you know, but to me, you know, I would definitely say there's been a lot more interference collectively being targeting light workers since December, January, than I've seen, you know, maybe since the beginning of COVID. That first year, there was a lot of shit going on, but this
Hmm.
new ball game, you know, that's been thrown on people is just, it's an extra background noise that's really
Hmm.
been annoying, you know. So us having to be like spiritual lawyers, like, no, we don't consent to that. Like, Gaia needs to clear this out, or like really reclaiming our ability to be like ambassadors of the Star Nations, and calling in higher intervention to be like, no, this is violating like a lot of contracts right now on a collective level. We don't consent to that. And you know, it's like being like a marshal on a galactic level, where star people can do that more, if you, especially if you understand your lineage, and if you've been involved in the galactic wars and different things like that, or part of councils, you know, connecting to that part of yourself and being like, you know, kind of like a UN, like a peacekeeping troop in a good sense of the word, where we're here to intervene and call shit out, so we can be able to call
Yeah.
intervention in,
Yeah.
and be able to, especially if it's being influenced from off-worlders to begin with, it, then it's already coercing free will. So it's not even about us at that point. It's about, calling it out so we can have remedies to transmute it, so that's what we try to do a lot, even in the group sessions. We'll do stuff where we pick up on bigger things during new moon, full moons that are happening collectively, where we need to call in extra intervention or collectively create a thought form visualization that the angels and guides want to help us assist us in to, restructuring some of the grids so that they're more lined up with the positive timeline and positive love energies, as opposed to all this attempt to like manipulate our spin so that people are literally like spinning out of their center and spinning in a more negative way, and getting in their way.
Right.
So, so that's, it's all connected together. And, so that even back with the funnier thing I mentioned about the cross in the sky, there are negative ET groups from the constellation and Southern Cross. It's in the southern hemisphere, you see it looks like a cross, and it's ironic because those two negative ET groups have a lot of influence over the Vatican, and there's a whole deeper alliance of them manipulating this Christianity in a dark way, as that's one of their things. One of the groups there kind of works with the demon Beelzebub that you hear about, like different texts, like kind of Lord of Flies, and there are cult groups based around these groups. I mean, you can even there was a website people can go. I don't recommend it, but it's some of these groups advertise without advertising, that they're doing things. So there actually is a group that worships and works with those demon energies, and literally the website's called ibeelzebub.com.
Jesus Christ.
And no, it's not just like I'm making this shit, channeling over people like, oh, you're making. I'm like, no, these groups are do research. Sure. Literally, you'll see they gather. They do the opposite of what light workers do. They like pray for darkness and chaos instead of order. Sure. It's not like that's not a conspiracy. These are groups. I've met people in New York. I mean, so they're all around. And but it's not about giving fear. It's just being awareness. It's being awareness with like, okay, wait a minute. We need to organize ourselves more consistently the way these idiots do, because it's time that we take back.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said too for awareness now. I think that's one of the roles that disclosure platforms, conspiracy platforms played, because there's something I've noticed that's a lot of things are expanding.
Sure.
The distortion obviously is almost getting silly, and I just want to go back to that in a second. But our abilities, and one of the things I've noticed is, like kind of like in the same light of instant manifestation becoming, the time that lapses between the thought and the creation is getting closer. But what I'm noticing is it's almost as if when you become aware, it becomes aligned. It's almost like a simultaneous thing. So that you're right. It's very important to point these things out. And then, of course, try not to get a charge with it, because some of it's really kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, and maybe go back to a couple other things, and then talk about what something that you just mentioned in real-time terms in regard to new moon and what's happening. But I wanted to ask you, one of the things I think that more and more people are coming online, and I think probably a whole bunch of them did this past weekend, has been that they're, even if you go to CNN, they're talking about a CME's hitting the Earth head on, and you're seeing it.
You started getting frozen on me there. Say it again.
The solar flares, like even okay, so you even see it on mainstream media, like they're talking about what these, okay. So what I'm trying to say is, and he just got knocked off. And every time that him and I do a show, he gets knocked off. Okay, so we're just going to wait, and he's going to come back. This is true. I mean, for those of you that don't know Stephen, he's pretty connected in the multi-dimensional level.
That was a rude interruption.
I know. I was telling them it always happens to you when we're doing it, and especially when we start talking about these sensitive subjects. What I was going to ask you is, so it's become more and more accepted, or more people are acknowledging that there are, call it what you want, sun rays, solar energy, solar flares, photonic light, whatever the hell you want to call it, coming in and being felt physically, emotionally, mentally, and so on. My question to you is, and there's no right or wrong answer, I just know you have a very wide berth of experience and so on, is, are these assholes being affected by these energies just as we are?
That's a very good point. Um, I would say a little bit of both, but also what I notice a lot of times is that they'll spray more chemtrails around solar flare, solar activity time period, because part of the desire is to try to block out certain frequencies that they can try to manipulate through certain chemicals and different electromagnetic weapon systems. So there is an idea where they're trying to create more of a screen to minimize some of the influences, or to create a little bit of a lens distortion of it, so that part of the spectrum maybe isn't coming in with a fuller range or curvature that it could be if it was coming in, say, through a clear blue sky. So part of it's like, it's almost like the rat hiding under the rock, or like them hiding in their cave. That's also a reason why a lot of them have underground bases, right? As you go deeper underground, then they try to block out
I got you.
radiation that comes from above ground. So there, it's like the darkness seeks deeper darkness to hide within, to clothe itself in. So I would say long term the effect for sure, and not only that, but on an inner plane level, astral level, especially, the solar energy does act, because of like part of the energy and angelic level when it comes here is through Archangel, through Michael and his legions, and there are solar angels and solar beings that are very powerful, and that's part of what you can really call in. And for me, that was my biggest awakening was through the sun work I did back in my early 20s, and I remember having to look into the sun and do solar gazing back in the early 90s before anybody was really talking about it publicly. And I have a video on YouTube called Solar Mysticism, or Solar Mystic. It's like a bio part one where I go into that kind of storyline. But for me, yeah, the longer term part, like especially post 2025 or even maybe 2030, there's going to be really serious stuff going on with the sun. That's going to really be part of that major catalyst, and that's going to penetrate all the way down. It's not going to be like resisted in that sense. So a lot of the darker groups are trying to hide in that way, or be like, okay, well, we can build our little dark shelters, to try to like hide out from it. But on a spiritual inner plane level, a lot of dark entities and lower astral energy gets transmuted when that solar energy comes in, because it is like a solar chelation therapy, or like
Right.
a Shakti pot from the divine solar logos, because stars are like the neurons in the mind of God, and they're major platforms for divine consciousness, and 6-7 dimensional beings that live there, that really want to help and infuse us with this amazing love, and transformational power. So that's one of the reasons why you have this black sun idea and these other groups, because even historically, when you had positive solar, kings or queens or pharaohs or leaders that really taught about the positive energy of the sun and creating a culture around it, usually you'd have a dark group coming right afterwards, during the next generation. I tried to flip it. And the same way like some of the Aztecs or Toltecs had distorted the Mayan teachings, or Temple of Set and Apophis group messed up a lot of the Ra teachings, in Egypt. You have this like reversal where they want to like, sacrifice their heart, or create a black sun instead of the real light sun, or like false light instead of real light. It's this because they understand the value and the power that the sun ultimately reflects our heart chakra. And that is the key to accessing divine oneness and our ascension, is through that correspondence of our personal sun in our heart and the actual sun, and the spiritual sun, and then Gaia's inner sun. It's like all those like the sun in the three worlds, sun in upper worlds literally coming, and Gaia's underworld sun, our spiritual sun, lining up together as part of this shaft of awakening. So, yeah, I mean, it can be directed more, and that's something we did in the last new moon. There was like the second half of it turned into like what I call like almost like more like a warrior circle, where it's usually something we'll do more in smaller groups when we have targeted goals to intervene, or remote view things going on, say at certain bases or sketchy locations we have to be a little more careful about. But there was a lot of energy pouring into Mars that we had to direct to Mars, because we started seeing all this shit going on in Mars that was really not good, by some of these negative ET groups that were building up a lot of negative energy, and they were really trying to gather a lot of dark forces on the inner planes on Mars, as an attempt to use the gravity connection between Earth and Mars, and just a normal correspondence between Mars and the Earth, on different levels, to try to like further add more turbulence and chaos and discord over the next coming years. So we're like, F that, like we're not consenting to having like galactic demons like being gathered on Mars to try to be sent to the Earth. Like it was like a bad movie scene, We're like, no. So we started seeing all these amazing beings coming in that wanted to come in to really open the floodgates of the atmosphere of Mars, to start to really zap it on the higher level. Like it was really an intense scene to feel it.
Was this
And then
April
really calling
April
in more.
1st? Was it April 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
And because that's all part of their desire to exploit and separate the male and female energies and create all this
Right.
disorder in Gaia's body too. And the people, it's manifesting in like more negative male energy, or like anger and like aggression, or like feeling of
Or
frustration or
Will
being
Smith
stuck.
slapping someone in the face. So let me
Or the side comedy show. Yeah.
let me ask you about that. You mentioned obviously you're very consistent, have been for a long time, gathering people, as well as the work you do, and just so people understand, because you are from New York and you talk very fast. I'm just messing with you.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry.
I know. I
Definitely
can. Yeah, I'm with you. No, what I'm saying is that you, like Dolores Cannon, like others, you have a whole archive, of experience with doing sessions where you gather information from those sessions and you kind of get a collective feel, just like Dolores Cannon and some other people.
Sure.
April 1st seemed to be really huge. Okay. A few days before that, a lot of people have been having very lucid dreams. I've been having them very much so. I had a lucid dream. You mentioned Archangel Michael. Somebody had given this to me at Soulogy Fest. This is an Archangel Michael thing that somebody designs. I can't remember the guy's name, and I apologize for that. But I was in this lucid dream, and I didn't even make the connection because I've had this on my altar for a long time. And as I was in the dream and trying to get my balance, I reached in my back pocket, and this thing was in my back pocket. Now, I hadn't really had Archangel Michael's consciousness had been a big part of my early development. From time to time might pop in. Anytime that consciousness would pop in, it would be about cutting the ties that bind. And so I get this lucid dream. April 1st hits. I wrote a post on this. I wake up with a bang, literally. Phones ringing off the hook, people projecting at me, sirens going off everywhere. I get up, and the mantra throughout the day was let it go and see what happens, whether it's something in the past or it's a bunch of noise in your face right now. And I end up, long story short, having this experience at the end of a very adventurous day where synchronicities were coming faster and faster and faster as I was working with this let it go, see what happens. I end up I said, I'm going to go get some gumbo. I go get some gumbo, and I had this whole experience. I won't go into detail. It's on my page. But ultimately what happened was I had probably, I would say, at least a 60 to 90 minute experience. And when I look at the clock, only 9 minutes went by. Now, there was a lot of other stuff going on. There was colors. There was all this stuff. But my soul was telling me, this is what you do. Now, I equated it with Michael's cut the ties that bind. You're cutting these cords of illusion. And I still can't really totally articulate this, but I was being shown that, I guess in my own words, breaking through the matrix, like breaking through the veil, and actually having in 9 minutes, this 90 minutes of stuff in 9 minutes, this very sensuous experience with food and with colors and with sound, and it was like everything that was there wasn't there anymore. Even I was in this really loud, boisterous restaurant. I had these drunks next to me that were extremely loud. It all went away, and my own experience just became the singular point. Now, on top of that,
beautiful.
There's been a lot of people talking about this past weekend. New moon came in, and it all seemed to start with April 1st. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, everywhere I looked, I could see people, whether it be of a physical nature, mental, emotional, and so on. Also, at the same time, just from the circles I run in, people that are doing the type of stuff that you do, where you gather a few people. Morgan's been doing this, where like-minded people come in and go into the New Earth grid and explore, okay? And a lot of really cool stuff happens. One of the things that happened in at least two of these gatherings, one was a workshop that we did, I think, on Saturday or Sunday. When we went, and I wasn't the only one, when we went into the New Earth grid, everything was pristine white. Everything was like, it still had definition. profile, but it was all white. Everything was white. When we concentrated our energies, it was a white sphere. I mean, and it
Mm.
just felt like a really good sign. You know, I know a lot of people have said that since the 22nd of February, we've entered a really leaped into a new phase. And now, you know, March seemed to be a lot of integration. Uh, but now, as we go into April, it's like it started with a bang. And I know it starts with a new moon and it ends with a new moon partial eclipse on the last day of the month. What's going on in from your perspective? What's been going on? What's going on in April? What are you picking up from the telepathic conversations you're having with these different star families and your own experience with groups when you gather?
Yeah, that's definitely a lot to unpack. Yeah,
That's fine.
that is it, definitely. Um, One of the things that came up during the recent new moon, well, actually this past new moon and last full moon as well, that during that cycle, there's been a lot of work, and also even the equinox too. There's been a lot of focus on reclaiming our sovereignty and like magnetism, and really doing work on trying to heal and clear out any turbulence or negativity that's clogging up Gaia's magnetic field, and also our own personal magnetic bubble, to be free of any contaminations or distortions. Has been a major thing, because we've always seen a lot of stuff trying to mess with the magnetic axis of the Earth, that was trying to create more sluggishness, and like a lot of like energetic version of like black goo we were seeing, that was kind of filling up certain areas inside the Earth, that was trying to think of like almost like grease in a car engine, you know, that gets like to like kind of like old oil or grease that becomes like sticky, and like you know, it ends up interfering with the gears turning. It's a little bit of that idea where this coagulation was occurring that shouldn't be there, that was being deliberately, you know, thrown in there. So there was a lot of assistance coming in, which funny, because I wasn't aware of the solar flares going on today, especially with the new moon, and there was a lot of solar energy and solar Michael energy coming in, these like golden bubbles. They were calling them like solar infinity orbs that were coming in, that like almost like light, these like light bubbles that we need to bring into the Earth as like a scrubbing bubble set, you know, to like wash clean, you know, and inside out. um and this, it's also a continuation of some stuff we saw from the Black Sun order, where there was like a fake layer of this black sun that was trying to obscure people's connection to the real inner core of Gaia. So they're trying to trick people to root into it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something we've been seeing in different cities and different locations, where we have to really have our, when you're doing a meditation, is really make sure you go all the way down to the core with the intention, and ask, like kind of like a wellspring shaft, to make sure the wellspring shaft of your personal connection, you know, all the way from your I am presence all the way down, is secure and sovereign and
And when you
upgraded
and
and protected.
when you say all the way down, are you talking about going to the core of Mother Earth?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So
Exactly. Because
so
there,
okay.
what we saw going on is that there's been a lot of manipulation on the outer core, which came up only about a month and a half ago. I didn't see stuff before that, but it was hiding there, and there's technology that was being put there by different groups, so off-worlders as well as some people on this planet, that was like kind of like a negative antenna system, and they were really trying to disrupt the flow, and create a whole different level of negative intervention. So a lot of, again, now a lot of beings are coming in now to help that, and what we heard is that between now and until July, it's going to take to help heal and clean out that outer core interference structure, because that's been creating, like, you know, it's basically trying to manipulate the energy from below, like kind of like creating a fake below and a fake above. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
basically trying to manipulate the idea of as above, so below, where you want to create like
The
through
same the
different means,
same
creating more.
the same template pattern as we were talking about, like with Gigi Young, like introducing a narrative that's not real, and therefore
Yeah,
you're not tapped into the natural evolution of the human species. Yeah,
except this is just done through like a background subliminal, you know,
yeah.
like a technology version of that. It's not something being verbalized. This is more of like just a background organized noise that's creating, for example, what I saw with the chemtrail recently, and it was working in conjunction with the new interference I was seeing here locally in New York City, that I hadn't seen before, where it was like, imagine like a vortex, or like a fan or a turbine, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
imagine when it's not plugged in, it just looks like the blades are there, it's not spinning. So it looked like part of the crystal turbine underneath New York City all of a sudden stopped spinning, and we're like, what the hell's going on? I mean, people are feeling disconnected. And then simultaneously with the new chemtrails, it was creating like a pressure cooker, almost like a fake chemical dome,
Mm-hmm.
where imagine you have like a dome with mirrors, and then this thing that's blocking the flow below is creating like a negative stagnation space where people are like stepping in their own crap, or but and then while they're trying to look up to for the higher realms to help, you know, their connection, all of a sudden they see this weird like mirrored dome on the inner planes that's just mirroring back the lower astral. So it's creating this like negative echo chamber, or like a pressure cooker, where you're not really feeling connected to a true above, and you're being disconnected from the true below. So part of the work is saying that we need to like make sure that anything that's trying to interfere with the proper spins, you know, above you, all your axes, basically, really reclaiming, you know, just like rotating a geometry in different axes. We've had to do that and like zoom in on the meditation level, to the quantum level. Like, no, we want to reclaim our sovereignty, our right to spin, our right to have freedom of all directions, all mobility, and you know, and all the axes. So because there's been a lot of shit magnetically trying to like, you know, almost like keep people boxed in, literally
Mm-hmm.
on a technological scale. There's also part of the distortion that was going on with the vaccinations for the COVID thing has been around that too. And it's been my least favorite, has been working on people that are vaccinated to see all the shit that's coming off their field has been pretty horrifying to me. You know?
Wow.
So,
Yeah,
and it is tied.
we had a friend on last week that's a practitioner in Hawaii, and she's not jabbed, and she actually picked up, uh, yeah, from people that had been jabbed that came in to be treated post jab. One of them had a massive resurgence in a dormant cancer. A couple of
Mm,
interesting things. I said, you know, do these people attribute their situation to the jab? And like, no. And I was like, wow, that's trippy. But the fact that she and a couple other of her friends that were practitioners had actually picked up the, you know, the energy of what those people had injected into themselves. You mentioned sacred geometry a couple of times. There's been a lot of talk. You know, there's been talk. You know, I can remember Morgan going back to 3 or 4 years, and even further in her experience with the Octahedron. And
mm,
recently this year, there's been a lot of talk. And in these sessions, the power of the Octahedron, almost as if it is the base component of the New Earth grid.
mm-hmm.
The information, the experiences, the magic that comes from it, the expansion that comes from it. What can you say in regard to the octahedron as far as what you know?
Yeah, no, it's actually one of my favorite shapes too. And it comes in a lot. For me, it's we talked about this in earlier shows about like the idea of the star heart, where it's like the evolution of the heart chakra, where you have new chambers forming that are allowing us to kind of connect both on the heart chakra and also in the auric bubble. It's creating new like shafts of light that are coming in from different positive galactic and cosmic sectors to help us receive more love from more of the universe that we've been kind of blockaded from, or maybe not conditioned to be open to receive from. And one of the shapes of it that's critical is like it's a star heart diamond shape. So it's basically an octahedron that can surround the field, and through the center of each face of the diamond are these shafts of light. Kind of like, think of like the Great Pyramid, where you had the different shafts that go from the king and
Mm-hmm.
queen's chambers up to different constellations. This is some idea where we're kind of reclaiming our own kind of version of our personal planetarium, you know, space in a way, in our own bubble, and realizing that we can have a space in our auric bubble that can reflect more of the cosmos in it. So then when we realize that, more of the universe literally can engage you, because now you're recognizing that you have more of it already kind of like um, in your internal eye, in your bubble. You know, it's almost like the interior and the exterior begin to connect more
Okay.
in a healthy way. And so these shots are coming in through the different center points of the octahedron to activate this new like star heart chakra, you know, both in the heart and around us, and they're like vibrating crystalline fields that are like quantum entangled, so you can connect to other, because usually when I call on other galactic positive beings, for example, say some Pleiadian priestesses that are connected with like Isis or Hathor, I always qualify it with star heart in front of it. So I'd be like star heart Pleiadian priestesses, you know, of Ma'at or Isis. And for me, it's kind of like part of the almost like higher thought form encryption, you know, where some of the higher beings are wanting us to also evolve our conceptualizations, our relationship to archetypes,
Right.
or you know, basically it's evolving higher heart to divine mind, so we can work together, you know, with wisdom and love to help create a new template, and be
So
able to see
it
things in that
sounds
realm.
like that it would behoove any of us to be become more connected to the octahedron.
Yeah, and qualifying it for me, I mean, whenever I've got any geometry, for me, qualifying it is just important because any geometry can also go both ways. From what I've seen, like years ago when Drumvelo was first doing the stuff with like the Merkaba exercises with like double tetrahedron, there was a lot of people getting messed with who were doing that because they just thought that, oh, I just spin this shape and visualize it, it's all going to be holy and love. And it's like, I'm seeing like some like great ETs like throwing these negative tetrahedrons at people because as a platonic solid, they focus fire energy. And I'm like, first of all, working with the tetrahedron, you have to be careful and qualify it more so than other geometries because it is fire. For me, I found that if I just did two pyramids, or interlacing, like a Star of David made of four-sided pyramids instead of two tetrahedrons, it was a lot more stable and grounded than just doing two tetrahedrons. And if you can do that, like I'm like, well, at least call on the angels to bless the geometry for you, and don't just open up because otherwise you're opening up like an antenna, and these people literally is opening up more 4D realm, but then other negative things were there waiting to host in them because they weren't qualifying it, they weren't making it specific what intention because geometry is a container and an antenna. Well, where do you want to tune it to? What station of reality do you want to tap into? Do you want love and higher, or do you want to, so, and it's a container. What are you putting inside it? Sometimes, so that's something.
So it sounds like to when we go into these experiences to put forth with specificity what we are seeking.
Yeah, and even if it's not a clear intention or that's conscious, even a general invocation, say for the directions, for the angels or guides to be with you so that they can provide a space for whatever's for your highest good to emerge. You can make it more open-ended, but as long as there's still some idea of like your sacred circle, even shamanically is important to create a space.
Your team.
Yeah, exactly.
So another thing I've been picking up on, and again, it's not because I'm smart, it's just because of the work I do, and a lot of people talk about it, and I just gather the information. Go ahead.
One more thing though, just make it complete with thought. As a reference point, many years ago when I was with friends with Preston Nichols, who's the one from the Montauk Project, he passed away a few years ago, and we had conversations. He's very big about the octahedron. He's written about this from his book too, and we had conversations about it, seeing that they had antenna systems, which I had seen before energetically. I was like, oh yeah, they're definitely creating antennas that are based upon sacred geometry design, but it's not always plugging into a positive thing just because they're using it. So he said that the octahedron was an important antenna system for the project he was involved with when it dealt with time travel, and that the octahedrons were an important geometry to access time portals. And then for me, that links up to the bigger work we were doing several years ago, first in England and Costa Rica, the Hypercube grid. I think we've talked about a little bit on the show before, which there was a new
Hypercube. The Hypercube. Okay.
Yeah, Hypercube is a 4D hypercube at 16 points instead of 8 points like a normal cube, and this is also forming around the Earth as part of one of her next level geometries of ascension. And the thing about hypercubes is that hypercubes are really powerful doorway points to access all different time periods. They kind of act like a lens or like an intersection point where the different sides of the hypercube can lead out to different timelines. So it's a really fascinating geometry. So the point is that these hypercubes are involved a lot in portals, time, especially time gates. And just from a mathematical point of view, how you have a geometry, say in one realm, say like a 3D cube would project an image of a square as a shadow, right, on a 2D level if you're putting light on it. Same way if you're projecting light through a 4D hypercube, one of the, depending on how you're rotating it, one of the ways that we would perceive the hypercube is as an octahedron. So an octahedron is actually part of a shadow of the center of a hypercube, as one way that we can. So sometimes we're not just tapping into a octahedron that's just here. It could actually be part of a projection coming in from a higher dimensional geometric landscape that provides us a vehicle to further kind of bring in more support from other time periods.
Well, this is part of what I was going to say or ask you next was and again, it's not, it feels the same. Okay. And that is that, over these past few weeks, people talking about having a clearer, stronger connection to the higher self, to the soul, to the multidimensionality. That seems like, from what you're describing, in this way, similar, in that having more accessibility to our multidimensionality, just to put it in a very general, concise statement.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right on.
I mean, I would say also, yeah, definitely with the increased solar activities going on, it's been helping out, because it's almost like the two realities are so like, it's like this teeter-tottering where you have this light and really powerful energy coming in, but then, like I said, we just keep seeing these other sabotaging attempts to like co-opt or obscure that view. So when people understand that the sun is still shining behind the clouds, that's the point we have to remind ourselves, even when we're dealing with challenging situations where we're confronting these new forms of the matrix attempt to infiltrate or reset themselves, by, co-opting people's free will and, through engaging too much fear and too much anger, or giving the power away to the pharmaceuticals, giving the power away to false father figures and leadership roles. That's part of this idea of like the Black Sun King, where they want people to literally be distorted towards like using whatever unresolved parent issues we have, are being projected onto the collective.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're like, and if not, and we're not clear, then we end up with a shadow version of the parent instead of the positive divine parent. The same way that we have different religious leaders in the past that try to stand between us and God and be like, oh, this is what God, it's like the fake in between person that like the darker religious heads, or the, in this case we have it in more of the technocratic situation, like with Fauci and them, well, if you don't follow this, then you're going to die, or you're going to get this, this, where they want to pervert the idea of this is for the collective good. You must, get jabbed in order to support other people. It's like, wait a minute, they're weaponizing Aquarius, and they're weaponizing our compassion to like use that natural impulse where we want to be loving and caring with each other against us. When people aren't using discernment and really intuition about feeling the situation, like, wait a minute, what's the real intention here? How is this all, for the highest public good has been used by all these dark governments for a long time to co-opt the masses, and people are still falling into it because it's been guised under the woke language.
Exactly. This Uranus group that you're connecting to, can you expand on that a little bit?
They're called the Suvians.
What's that?
They're called the Suvians.
Suvians.
Suvians. Suvians is what they
are they now. Are they a group that you'd been connecting with over the years, or they just popped in recently?
No. Only a few months ago. My first contact with them. So I was very excited to see about that, because I was always curious. I'm like, what's going on in Uranus? But part of the thing also is that this whole darker side of the false grids that have tried to block the Earth is that they've also tried to block humanity from connecting to our closest allies in our own friggin' solar system. They really try to create a disconnect in the tree of life, planetary wise, and they've tried to co-opt it with the tree of death, which is part of the distortion, the anti-life or the dark energies. And part of that consequence is, dividing us from like Gaia from the family, and it's like, wait a minute, we have so much, there's more support in our solar system, not every planet, but there's definitely more help here locally than we realize. And at the same time, there's more shenanigans going on, say locally on Mars, than people realize that needs to be intercepted on the moon as well. So it's like creating blinders in people's perception, and we get overly fixated only on further out galactic beings. We forget about our local family. So that's why for me too, even like I know on a metaphysical level, building up a rapport in our medicine where we're really like calling in, each of the angels, like Kabbalistically in the tree of life, you have a different archangel that governs a different planet, right? And so this is important, otherwise we're only dealing with one branch of tree of life, then you forgot about the whole family tree. So it's like restoring harmony in our family tree, then we can really make a bridge to the star nations more efficiently, because now there's less room co-opted if you have more of a coherence of your local support, like astrologically being mirrored to you. So for example, like, we'd have a circle visualization of a circle, and there'll be points in a circle where there'll be gateways, like beautiful like archways that lead out on pathways to different planets. So and there'll be representatives that you call like higher planetary ambassadors, say from Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, to be welcomed in, and stand at the gateways with you, so that they want to help us rebuild our drawbridges from our castle, from our personal kingdom, out to where those actual locations are at. So basically, it's creating a local reference point,
right?
To engage a more clear dialogue, and networking with these other spaces. They're like interfaces, basically.
Right.
They work with symbols because that's our subconscious and our right brain also works. So it's evolving our relationship to symbols and geometries and colors, so we can let in the good stuff and really kick out the other shit that shouldn't be co-opting it.
People have also talked about how there's stuff going on inside their body, and I mean, obviously, there's a lot to be said for transforming from carbon base to light body, or crystalline body. Um, but specific, myself, many other people I know, talking about hands in their body. Feels like somebody's doing
Mm,
work inside their brain and other
mm.
parts of the body. Any comments on that?
I mean, as I would say, pay attention how you feel during and after that, right? If it's something that makes you feel more supported and loving and healed after, that sounds like it's a good team, right? If it's something that's doing the opposite and you're feeling more disconnected, more angry, more more shadowy, more pain, I would say maybe maybe do some clearing, to be like,
I
oh, you only
think
want
from
inside.
what I can gather, it's all been very positive. It's all been very
Okay, good,
positive.
good, good, good.
And
That's good.
God, so and then there's the wild card factor. Okay, the wild card factor to me is, and this is how I would describe it. It's funny to watch, and it's not anything personal or political. I'm just talking about what's being seen by more and more
Mm,
people. For instance, even like if you take the whole Hunter Biden laptop thing, just
mm,
as one example, more and more people are going, wait a minute, this mainstream media isn't actually reporting the truth. You know, other examples might be, Joe Biden making three comments last week. We're going to remove Putin. We're going to bring troops in, and whatever the other third comment was, and then actually a few days later, just saying I didn't say that. Uh, so what I'm trying to
right.
say is, it looks like beneath all the narratives at the ground level that more and more people are seeing the truth, and that by virtue of that alone, as a catalyst to self transformation and the energetic
Mm,
impact that can have, and in display of the true power of the human species, which to me could wipe it, neutralize everything and anything. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? Because it seems to be moving faster and faster and faster.
and again, there's a lot of mixed stuff going on simultaneously, and there's a lot of disinformation being thrown out with truth from all sides, especially in the current scenario going on with Russia and Ukraine, for example, with
Absolutely, yeah.
with the Biden connection. There are other elements of it that are also very interesting and and a little bit concerning too, that we've seen going on um, over there. But it's there's multi factors. Like one level of it has to do with these negative, like Nordic ETs, which have agreements with a lot of countries, and they're trying to bring in more energy from this negative parallel Earth that I think I might have talked about before, maybe earlier shows. I talk about on some of my YouTube videos, and it was one of the timelines where I was taken during my military abduction, and also had parallel incarnations. Because we are going through a synthesis of a lot of different timelines that are being coming up to surface for us to be acknowledged, to either transmute or accept, or like kind of the Mandela effect idea. But there's also those who are trying to manipulate and like cross pollinate histories and timelines that we don't need to be connected with.
Right,
And they're
right.
trying to take advantage of that transparency of the veil getting thinner and trying to use it for their advantage. So this is where we need to be like gardeners, not just in space but also in time. Be like, no, we do not, like, we are here to claim the power of our authentic history that is real and true. We do not allow any interruptions, any weird time blending that is not for highest good. We do not consent to that, because there's a really real thing going on now with that negative parallel Earth. When Preston, I talked to Preston years ago about it, and he called it Earth 2, which is one of the places that they went to in the Montauk Project when they were exploring not just time travel but parallel reality travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I call it Trinicon, which is how I heard the name when I was first seeing it many years ago. And in that timeline, Atlantis didn't sink but was won by the dark. So imagine that, fast forward 10,000 years. Same time, there's another positive parallel Earth that's the opposite, where Atlantis didn't sink but was won by the light. And they're where we want to be closer to in terms of the working in harmony with the star nations and positive technology, positive environmental stuff. All they have their act together. So we have these two options going on literally in our Earth here. It's kind of in between, a bit of a tug of war at this in
Zero
this
point.
moment to be like,
It's a 0 point field.
yeah, there you go again. It's like we need to really be conscious of like dropping down and like really crapping it out, so to speak. So some of these negative groups with that Apophis and like negative Nordic group, they're creating these weird looking hexagonal antennas that we're noticing that are 4D, like black hexagons. And you can start thinking about graphene, which has been present in some of the vaxes, right?
Right.
And trying to like distort geometry and create correspondences. These structures have been popping up at different locations, different military bases, different areas. I mean, several around the States, Canada, was one in Russia, one in Shanghai. So I'm doing some special work with smaller groups to try to like look into it more and bring more transmutation into it, because they're basically creating a negative relay system to try to bring energy in from the false black sun and the parallel reality, because they're saying, oh, because humans here, this is how the negative like Nordic ones from their mindset, they're like, since humans here aren't paying enough attention to the sun here, or built the true intent, built the true relationship to divinity in the sun here, let's replace it with our false sun and have people see themselves under the rays of this other illumination, quote unquote, in a darker way.
What does that look like in our everyday reality? Is that
Oh, well,
suggestive programming? Is that symbology that's put in front of our face to try to activate us, or how does that work?
well, it's also confining. Think of like building a maze for like the rats, like the old sheeple. Like they're literally trying to create more barriers to connecting to higher consciousness by creating these artificial structures that are showing up on the inner planes first. So it's making people feel more boxed in, more anxious, more angry, more like jaded, hopeless. It's feeding that mentality. And it's not saying that we're all be victimized by it, but the point is that it's in a process of being built. So the final product, I don't even want to go where that is going to be at, because we're not going to allow it to be that. But it's creating enough interference, because at those locations there are other things happening there that we've seen in a bunch of clients that are pulling energy from them. We've also seen people that had been vaccinated, some of the people's images showing up as like pixels in these hexagons. So literally one of my guys made a joke. They're like, oh, people who got the jab didn't realize that they were voting for the new Black Sun King. And I'm like, no, we're not about that. So this is my long segue to get back into the Russian Putin thing. So we saw it going on over there because we started sending light and trying to remote view and see who we need to call and help to intervene at the facility over there, because there's a negative Nordic ET base near Moscow. But we also had found a bunch of soul pieces of people that was even in the group with us. We're over there. We're saying, why are some of our soul pieces stuck over there in this weird facility? And that's something we find with like some of the people that have been involved in military abductions or in programs where they've been exploited. There's a lot of harvesting going on of people's energies that are trying to be displaced. So being able to call back all of our energy is really important now from any displacement, any relocation that we don't authorize. So at this location over there, though, we were seeing another group that was connected to the Baal energy. Like Baal, as he's the demon reference in the Bible. Different religions talk about this. The Old Testament and old Israelites used to do sacrifices to this fake god back in the day. He's also, Edgar Casey talks about the sons of Baal being like connected to Atlantis and the fall and stuff, and like the money system in Babylon is all connected with Baal. So I'm mentioning that because this figure is taking on a new little bit of importance for us to transmute. Point of, I'll make a link back up to it. Several years ago, I had a friend, I'm not gonna say who she's connected to, but she had access and she had some meetings with some generation family members of a few different Illuminati families. And these people told her that Baal, or representative of Baal's group, because he's really an extraterrestrial leader of a dark world, basically, just like these other idiots are. They have their own little empire goals, So they said that they had a manifestation of Baal come to them and they wanted to renegotiate. He wanted them to sign contracts with his group again. And they were like, F you, we don't want to deal with your group anymore. So obviously Baal wasn't too happy about that in that situation, but it was nice to see some younger family members standing up to this darker energy and choosing a new path, right? I don't know if necessarily they're there now, but point is that I wonder what this entity is going to do against them, because this is not something he would normally be happy about. So years later now, we see the Baal energy. We also saw other stuff in a bigger project we're working on with some people that are reincarnated from an Atlantean dynasty that wasn't so good. And we saw that there was a blending of a few different negative ET bloodlines that first grounded in Atlantis that were trying to set up their little dark family, the politics. And then we saw in Russia that the Baal group actually had some older history with Russia, and that Putin inherited that, and that Putin had made a deal with the Baal group. And this is not a good thing, because what we saw was very creepy. And then a few days ago, I talked to somebody, I can't remember who it was, who she mentioned, but she said some other person who talks about, channeling conspiracy stuff and seeing things. She mentioned something that resonated with me because of what we saw there, was that as part of this new like super cloning, super soldier project there, that they were literally trying to create a body for Baal to walk into. So basically from what they want to do is, this is what's so ballsy. Baal's group wants to be the leader of the New World Order. This is their little dark, wet dream that we're not going to manifest, but to understand, some of the moves going on, we have to call divine intervention, say, no, we do not want any fake Antichrist figure coming into a body now, because this is their mentality. Literally, it's like dimensional dark lords trying to come into a human body that's like supercharged with all this negative energy, and he wants to now be the new leader of the Illuminati. So this is very recent news I've been talked about, and we were like, what the F? So we start sending a lot of energy, like, no, you cannot have access to all this. And they're feeding off death energy going on from the war right now, literally, because a lot of the negative ETs feed off of death energy during conflicts.
Right.
Like during Iraq and Afghanistan, they were feeding off a lot of soldiers being killed that were, like, for them, modern day sacrifice to dark portals that were there, that were connecting them to Orion and dark groups over there, literally. So they're literally trying to harvest the energy for not good purposes. But it's kind of funny. What's funny about it is that it seems like Baal group is going out of character in sense of wanting to, like, say an F you to some of the other power people, and he wants to be like the new OG, in the neighborhood, and it's like, no, we don't. So look at it that way as a soap opera. It's kind of funny, like, what? And one interesting side note, if it actually came out, would be positive, but we unfortunately think it's now not being used in the right way. I was always wondering what happened when Russia first went to Ukraine. What was the first thing Putin did? Was to take over Chernobyl. We're saying, why is he doing that? I started looking, I'm saying, there's something in Chernobyl, something physically there that they want their hands on. It's not just about the cover story we're hearing, from the mainstream media. Then I called up one of my friends who works for, she works for Homeland, person works for Homeland Security, but I'm not gonna say exactly more. They heard from their intel people that they said, what's a great place to hide things in a radioactive wasteland? I was like, exactly what I'm thinking. Well, tell me what you know. And the only thing they said was that, well, from their sources, they said that there was a very incriminating files and evidence against members of the deep state and higher ups, negative, that were being kept in Chernobyl, and Putin wanted his hands on it. And so my friend was like, hopefully the in-house fighting would start, but I'm saying he may not be using it for humanitarian purposes, but more as leveraging with this new alliance that's going on.
It sounds like it sounds like all these factions, that's what they do. They just tug a war back and forth. Back to the Michael Sala thing is, and I'm pretty sure this is adjacent to Chernobyl, but the very first region they took over, his research or his information was that one of those arcs was there, and they wanted to secure that they had one in Russia. They wanted to secure that one, and I guess ultimately, we've got all of this, let's just say, non-physical stuff going on. All of these forces, and you can even look at it in the energy field, like disinformation, information, or black and white, or dark and light, or whatever. And it's all just like this big mixing bowl. In your opinion, at this stage of the game, and maybe always was and always will be, I don't know. I want to see what you have to say. There's no right or wrong answer. Is it not all contingent upon us? What energies proliferate, what energies diminish?
Us as a collective, absolutely. And also us as individually for our personal lives. Absolutely too. But and again, that's where the awareness comes in too, because there are people that I know that were healers doing stuff, but they started getting like really disconnected, and they didn't know why, and they were doing normal things to clear, and it wasn't working. And I'm like, well, that's when you started having to look deeper. Like, okay, what are these deeper karmic things going on collectively that need to be addressed? What are these deeper technologies that are being thrown out at us on a quantum level that need to be cleared out, or in other words, have us reclaim our sovereignty in places and spaces we didn't know we even existed in? Right. So that's one way I turn around a lot of the shit that I see is some of this funky stuff we're saying, how are they exploiting this, or like this new fractal thing that they're trying to contaminate? I'm like, well, thank you for showing me that, because I wasn't even aware of that specific layer of creation that I'm part of until you started blocking it. And now you're showing me
and I
the
guess
opportunity,
and I
my
guess
sovereignty there.
right. And I guess ultimately, like if I just use an example, I mentioned to you the 5 days with COVID.
Oh
That
yeah.
was a procession of I'm just using human terms, like a procession of demonic entities that I
Mm.
just brought into equilibrium one by one. Each one of them got bigger, badder, uglier, and smellier. But I guess what I'm saying is that that was the way it came to me. It could come to
Mm.
other people in different ways, but ultimately, we're gaining our sovereignty through empowering ourselves and not bowing down and not giving our power up, whatever that is that's presented to us,
Sure.
to challenge us to do that or to take it away from us, right?
Yeah, no, and I think that's also where like both personal work and also positive community work is important to kind of help so that we can be positive mirrors for each other, because there are certain times, when parts of us get maybe hijacked or hit and we're like, what the fuck's going on there? How do I get rid of this? And we need
Mm-hmm.
we need some healthy mirrors to help us compensate for our own personal blind spots that we all have at different times in our life, and then we start to come together. We can start seeing from all angles of the circle, like what's going on, in all different directions. Like, okay, now we can, create this other layer of support, and not allow that unwanted gift that them becoming under like smelly mail to your house.
Man, having a conversation with you is like being on a high speed train. Well, I could do this for hours with you. It's very interesting. Let's shift gears. We only got like 8 or 9 minutes left. I want to ask you
Sure,
about.
sure.
I want to ask you about, because I'm just curious. In regard to, because I've heard a lot of people talk about this. Now, I've mostly had session work with Morgan. I know everybody's different. The
Sure.
Dolores Cannons, and I mean, there's just the QHHTs, and there's the regressions and all that stuff. But in particular, because I've never really gotten enough information to really make a decision or discernment on my own level. But coming from your experience and your years as a practitioner, what is the value to knowing your galactic heritage? And is it, let's just say, is it a block of information or code that once you receive it is just, let's just say, not to make light of it, but like a download, and you take it, you
Mhm.
absorb it, you put it behind you, and you move on? Or is it something that is important and inherent to our transformation in terms of knowing our history beyond just the earth?
I would say absolutely for that, for sure. I would say that's becoming even more important to kind of do that, because part of how we do it shamanically is, and that's what I call it, cosmic shamanism, is it's about us creating more interface spaces so that the benevolent races that we come from can help intervene, ground, share their love and support,
Mm-hmm.
right, with the collective consciousness of humanity and with the
Mm-hmm.
body of the earth. So to do that, we have to build bridges, we have to build structures to help, because ultimately these families are vibrating on love frequency and love and wisdom and unity consciousness. So having the collective go up to the heart chakra is critical to be able to have the drawbridge open to these, larger hyperspatial family members, and their realms of reality that want to, be like the cupbearer of Aquarius. They want to be able to pour their support into our cup to
I
help us
got you.
have those,
I got you.
have that support. So the idea is that so much of what we saw happening, I'll give you a reference point. So much of what happened at the beginning of COVID, that first year, was we were pretty, I was extreme myself. I was horrified at how messed up some of the new structures got eroded because of the extrapolation of social contract and the application technologies that were used from that. Basically, the idea is like as soon as they started the shutting down of the transportation and the same day that like our, over here in the U.S. when Trump had stopped the flights from Europe coming in, I was working with a client in England, and literally halfway through the session, because I usually connect with the energy and ley lines, the energy just stopped and it felt like a blockade. And I was like, wow, I can't feel any connection now between U.S. and Europe on this energetic level. Same day as a few hours later is when they announced the blockade. of travel. And I was like, oh, and that became worse and worse. It became a hyperspatial, like icy realm that was starting to like block energy flow between all different locations. And it was using that consent that people had. Oh, it's not safe to travel. So they were trying to extrapolate and be like, oh, it's not safe to travel hyperspatially. Oh, it's not safe to travel multidimensionally,
Mm-hmm.
which is bullshit. But that's the idea of how they pulled a blanket over
Well,
people collectively. But
it's interesting and intriguing how the physical and literal linear motions actually parallel or mirror through, you know, the different fields.
they try to extrapolate the law and mandates on here and as above so below using the same idea.
Right.
Then they want to steal it onto the astral and on the in the hyperspatial level, at least a layer of it that they can try to manipulate. So and then they were trying to erode a lot of the positive structures and they're now being rebuilt again. But it was like, wow, this is amazing to see how they're really steering collective anger and fear and other technology to like warp where we're supposed to be at, right? And create this delay. So the similar idea, that's even more important. We had to say, wow, so part of the thing they're also doing is that they're trying to create a bubble where they're trying to tell people, oh, it's not time yet to connect to your galactic selves. Oh, it's not time yet for the positive ETs to come to the earth and ground fully. And that's like on a subliminal subconscious level that's been kind of broadcasting. And it's bullshit. It's the opposite. We need to like say enough of this fake veil, enough of this blockading of consciousness between us and our celestial self personally and our families, because they're literally waiting hyperspatially outside the earth, trying to come in masses.
I
to be like, hey, we want to.
I totally agree with you, and I would just extend that declaration that you just made to, as well as people saying we're going to have to wait till 2027 or we're going to have to wait till 2030. Fuck that. I mean, we can do this now. Right now. And I love the way, you know, you've explained today, because a lot of the stuff I've experienced, in particular with these sessions at Morgan's, you know, that I've been a part of with that, where there's this thing about the bridges, there's this information and reality, you know, of having a stronger connection to the multidimensional aspects, be it higher self, be it whatever you want to call it. I also like your explanation about the significance of pursuing the galactic lineage when you explain it for the reason that it basically is creating that bridge and that channel to give you more tools to pull from, right? So that's
and help and collectively it creates a space to invite that evolution of consciousness to be more in to be increased, because it's like the negative groups have been doing the opposite for so long. They've been trying to like warp and, you know, give us like lower vibrational astral crap that we don't need. So we really need more divine inspiration and solutions that come in from our larger collective consciousness communities that are from other planets that are here that say, okay, wait a minute, you know, this is they don't want to be invasive with that energy. They don't want to be, no, it's loving. And that's how we do it. We build the bridge from the inside out, and then others can be like, wait a minute, that's a beautiful flower in your field, that's a beautiful crystal light, you know, and they can see into you this like magic of the higher realms that comes through you because of the connection you've now valued to reestablish, you know, and realize that a lot of groups are trying to do the opposite. They're really trying to cut a lot of star people off. And it's, no, we need to reinforce that sacred pathway.
And even what you were talking about, you and your contemporaries, the ones that you had cited about the Octahedron, having you know, basically having this multi-D type of prism spectrum thing where you're actually inviting so many more potentials in terms of you know, what you can access and what can access you. And also like the way that you say when you're doing this, you're doing it for the collective too, because the more people that are pursuing that type of thing, the bigger the gate is for everybody. You know, the bigger the opening is for everybody, and the more maybe say even the easier it will be to find for people. Because of
it's like the sunlight.
You know,
Sun ray popping through a cloud, you know, when it pops through makes a hole in the cloud because you're calling it in, the people can start seeing, and you know, the sun is right behind that too, and they can have more faith to do the same thing, and then that becomes a positive catalyst, like you said. You know, that's more important, because that's so much what's going on is, you know, we, especially in big cities, I mean, it was really rough here, you know, New York too, feeling all this shit. We're like, oh my god, like this, and this collective depression and anger was like, oh my god, you know, I want to scream and like break out of it. And I was like, wait a minute, there's also structures here that are making people go crazier faster, because they're literally trying to co-opt the environment because people aren't filling it in with their intention.
I know. I saw a video Like it must have been from like 2, 3 months into the COVID thing, maybe the summer of 2020. And it was this guy. I just saw this like 3 months ago, but it was dated, from let's say the summer of 2020. And the guy went down to Times Square, and it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and there was nobody there. It looked like something out of the apocalypse. I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me, because anyone that's ever been to Times Square, doesn't matter what time of day it is, doesn't even matter what time of night
Yep.
it is. And this was 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody. Like it was just like,
Scary. Yeah.
whoa, that's like, so when you take into account the things that you talk about, it just kind of reinforces how the physical, linear, literal human experience, what it really is. Maybe the veil is seen through the superficial and looking through, by our own efforts consciously, the energy behind it, both what is being presented that say antagonistic or counter, but also the archangel Michael energy, or the
Yes.
even the
Yeah.
energetics of your own motions and rhythms. Very, very cool, dude. We're having
Very cool.
a another Soulogy Fest, September
I heard that
23rd.
recently.
Yeah, 23rd, 24th, 25th. So we need to talk about that in Arkansas.
Yeah, I'd
I
love to
don't,
do that.
yeah,
That
we
would be
don't
great
have
to
a.
be involved in
It's good. It's a lot cheaper over here. So, and it's more central.
that.
So I think we'll get. I think
That's
we'll have.
true.
We're hoping. Morgan and I. Hopefully, we can maybe even triple. Uh, Obviously, we put a cap on the
Yeah.
first one because we wanted to make sure that we really,
Well, of course. All of
did
the
well.
information is
I
back
mean,
then.
attended to everybody well. But yeah, so we'll get on that, and we'll get together again.
That'd be awesome.
Soon.
Take some
And
Arkansas crystals and maybe drive out to Hot Spring. That'd be awesome.
yeah, right now it's funny how things happen, but it could be northern, it could be that direction. I don't know yet. I'm working,
On the location.
yeah, we're working to find a location, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
possibilities. Mount Magazine, Pinnacle, the Ozark. I mean, there's even this area is very powerful. I mean, so Arkansas just is, it's just powerful. Period. I mean, there's
Yeah,
no
I've never
doubt.
been there. I've been wanting to a long
Dude,
time.
it's
Like,
yeah, it's lit, no doubt, no doubt. But man, I
definitely.
appreciate it. I love you, man.
Yeah, bro,
I always
definitely.
enjoy talking to you, and thank you for being
Likewise.
yourself.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
and
also people.
hmm,
Yeah. Anybody want to email me? I could always send. I always record all the group work we do, and
hmm,
it's powerful to hear it, not just them, but also later on. So if anybody ever wants any any recording links, sometimes I put some on YouTube. Other times I don't. Of any of the new moon full meditations, there's a
yeah,
lot of information energy comes in with that. I can send the Dropbox links to people,
right on.
as well.
Well,
Send them right.
yeah, I'm gonna follow up with you on a couple things. I'll reach out to you, but I do want to say, deep gratitude to you and to those that you work with for what you're doing, because that's a very powerful thing, to be doing that, yeah, and to be doing it all these years. And so just thank you, thank you, thank you on
Thank
behalf of
you.
humanity. And I will see you again,
Likewise, brother.
brother,
Likewise.
before too long. All right. Peace out. Take
Sounds good.
care. All
Peace.
right.
Love everybody.